All right, then Econ friends, welcome back to another video. So in our previous little discussion, we outlined the 4 market structures, kind of gave you an idea of what market structure is, how it's defined, what it means. Now let's start a formal treatment of our first structure, and that is perfect competition. As we go through these market structures, just by way of context, some of the things that you're going to want to be looking at will be, number 1, what are the traits and the characteristics and the definitions and the assumptions of the model? Okay, so for the market structure, what's it defined as and what does it consist of? From there, we'll be looking at the profit maximization decisions. How do firms within a particular structure decide the critical questions of Q, right? How much to produce, and P, what price to charge, and how do they determine profit or loss? And then from there, we'll take a look at things like short run and long run adjustments. And then we'll typically wrap up by taking a look at the industry, at the market structure itself through the lens of economic efficiency. Okay, so that's kind of the pathway that we're going to take for the upcoming lectures. Let's jump in to perfect competition. And by definition, we start off by saying that perfect competition is a market structure in which a very large number of sellers supplies an identical, or what we would call homogeneous product. Okay, so by definition, perfect competition is characterized by a very large number of sellers who are selling an identical, aka homogeneous, if you want the fancy econ term, product. Now, it's important to point out that in the real world, what we would call, pure, truly perfect competition is rare. There's a couple of small examples that you can isolate, but it's really not common at all. It's very rare. That should not dissuade you from understanding the importance of the model. Yes, it's rare, but critically, the tools that we're going to develop to study perfect competition, they help us in lots of ways. They give us insights into understanding economic efficiency. They give us insights into understanding the critical role that competition plays as a dynamic process that makes us better off as citizens and consumers. And fundamentally, we're always going to take a look at perfect competition as like the benchmark by which to compare the behavior of firms in other structures. So don't be fooled by the idea that, well, this really never occurs, so it's useless. It's actually a very critical market structure to cover. Because at the very least, if you understand the criteria that makes some markets really efficient, then you can make policy recommendations to make inefficient markets better. Okay? So with that said, what is perfect competition characterized by? Well, there's a few. The biggest thing is that there are many buyers and sellers. That's one big characteristic. In other words, what this means is that each individual firm supplies only a very, very small portion of the total amount supplied by the market. In other words, when you have many sellers, it implies that no individual seller has any market power. Or seen differently, the decisions of one individual seller here will have no impact on the overall market. Because again, each seller, right, each firm, they supply only a small fraction. Sorry, lost my screen share there. Sorry about that. Had some internet problems. We're back. What I was saying was each firm in turn supplies only a very small portion of the market's total output, so no individual firm has any clout. Okay. Second big criteria, and again, sorry for the interruption, is that the firms sell identical, or what we will call in fancy economics terminology, homogeneous products. So there is no product differentiation. There are many, many firms and they each sell exactly the same product. That's going to have some implications in a minute. The third criteria is that there are easy entry into and exit out of the industry. In other words, it's very easy for a firm to enter the industry, and it's very easy and costless for existing firms to exit the industry. In other words, what we would say in economic jargon is that there are no significant barriers to entry. Okay, so this third criteria, low barriers to entry. And this is really important because low barriers to entry ensures that in the long run, firms that are operating in a competitive market, they will earn zero long run economic profit, which we also know we're going to call normal profit. Okay, this is really important. The idea that firms can enter and exit this industry very easily, the fact that there's low barriers to entry, it implies that if any firm is able to make profits in the short run, those profits will not sustain in the long run because the entry of new firms will eat up those profits and they'll go away. And what this means is that in the long run, competitive firms will earn zero economic profit, AKA normal profit, AKA they will be operating where their price equals their marginal cost. Okay, so these are three characteristics, and individually they don't mean a lot, but collectively they have a whole lot of impact, because taken together, what these characteristics mean is that a perfectly competitive firm is fundamentally a price taker. Okay, firms in this industry, so the individual companies that are competing in a perfectly competitive structure, they are fundamentally price takers. And this is an important definition. A price taker is a firm that has no control over the price that they can charge. In other words, that decision of how much to charge, a firm in this industry has no control over. They are price takers. They have no control over price, and instead, the individual firm must accept the market price as their price. Okay, it works out like this. If you have up here in panel A the market, and you have here in panel B the individual firm, it works out like this. At the market level, okay, so here in panel A, at the market level, the supply and the demand, okay, the supply and the demand that you already know, those are going to give you the equilibrium. And this would lead to, as you know, the equilibrium price. In this case, $7, okay? That's the equilibrium market price. Well, this $7 is also the price that the individual firm must accept. The individual firm, okay, over here in panel B, they have no particular market power, no pricing power. Remember that this firm is a price taker. They have to accept the market price found by the market equilibrium as a given. So the $7 market price is also the price that the individual firm must charge. Critically, this leads to a couple of endings, of results, of ramifications. Number one, since the firm is a price taker, its demand curve is perfectly horizontal. In other words, perfectly elastic. In addition, what we're going to learn is that this demand curve is not just the price, $7, but also the marginal revenue, okay? So critically, again, to recap this, decisions at the market level with market supply and demand end up influencing the firm level. Notice something really important. Let's go to red for some contrast. Let's say that something happens. So right here, you see that the supply and demand lead to a price of $7, which the firm has to take. Let's say that something happens in the market so that the market demand increases, which, as you know, would shift the demand curve to the right, which would lead to a new equilibrium. And let's say that this new equilibrium price is, maybe $9. Well, since the market price changed based on the supply and demand change, the firm also now takes the price of $9 as its new price and therefore its new demand curve, okay? So really critical that you take away that interactions and movements at the market level push over to the firm level. The firm is fundamentally a price taker, okay? Another implication of this is that we assume in competitive theory that since the firm is a price taker, it can sell all of its output at the market price. So the firm, we assume, can sell effectively unlimited output as long as it's charging the market price. But on the other hand, it cannot sell any output if it charges any price above or in excess of the market price. So what this tells us, my friends, is that the firm's primary decision in a competitive structure is the Q question: how much to produce? Because the firm assumes we can produce and sell as much as we want as long as we charge the market price, and we won't sell any if we go above the market price. The other takeaway, and you had a hint of it up here when we saw the perfectly horizontal, perfectly flat demand curve, we believe that in perfect competition, the individual firm's demand curve, which you just saw, is perfectly horizontal and therefore perfectly elastic at the market price. And if you think back to our lesson on elasticity and what perfectly elastic meant, you should be putting all those ideas together and understanding that this perfectly horizontal, perfectly elastic demand curve implies that if they charge even $1, hell, even a penny over $7, for example, they'll sell no output, because consumers in this market are perfectly price sensitive because they have countless substitutes from large numbers of sellers, okay? So that's how those factors all come together. So that, my friends, is an introduction to perfect competition. You have the characteristics. Your big takeaway is that the PC firm is a price taker, that the market dynamics set the market price, which leads the firm to take that price and have a perfectly elastic, perfectly horizontal demand curve. In our next video, now that we understand how that works, we'll figure out how the firm puts all that knowledge together to maximize profits, or if need be, to minimize losses. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.